So welcome everyone to the Conversational Hypnotherapy live training. Yes, I agree with you. Anyone else who's not as excited at that might as well leave right now because you'll make my life far harder otherwise. I want to welcome you to the extended version. This is a 3-day version. We have a lot of ground to cover, but I'm very excited because, as many of you know, the Power of Conversational Hypnosis, the audio home study program, was first of all our first main program that we ever launched as a company, and secondly is the one that put us on the map in terms of as a hypnosis training business. So this is a special performance, shall we say. So thank you for coming to this thing. Before we launch into it, there's a couple of kind of questions I need to ask just to get a sense of where we are as a group and to set some expectations in terms of what we're doing here. The first question I would like to know about is how many people in the room were already hypnotists and knew it, at least, before you came into this room? In other words, had successfully hypnotized some people before this? Excellent. How many of you have done just some reading and some listening and stuff like that, but not really done much about it? All right. How many of you have no idea what you're doing here? You're told to come in the room. And you're hoping it'll be fun. All right. Yeah, it includes me as well, right? Good. It just gives me a sense of the kind of breakdown in terms of the room. Don't worry in terms of skill levels. I expect no skill whatsoever before you sit down in the chair. We're going to start everything from scratch, from first principles, from first set of experiences, and so on. By the end of today, it'll be very difficult for most people to tell who's had experience before and who hasn't. By the end of tomorrow, it'll be almost impossible. By the end of our final day, it'll be impossible to tell. In fact, you'll probably think someone has had no experience when they've been doing it for 10 years and you go, oh, I'm so sorry. He was a lot better. The reason I say this is because we're going to be working at a different pace and a different level than a lot of people are used to. How many people here have trained with me before at a live event? Just put your hands up. It's about half the room or so. Good. So those of you who haven't put your hands up just now, please look to the people who did put their hands up, if you can remember, for confirmation on some basic facts that I'd like to present to you right now, because I'm going to predict a lot of what's going to happen to you in your experience over the next 3 days. The first thing you'll notice happening pretty quickly somewhere today is that the pace is going to move much faster than you're comfortable with. In other words, your intellect's ability to keep up with everything that's just happened will be almost impossible for a lot of you. Some of you will keep up for at least a day or so, but eventually you'll get to a point where you have no idea what's going on. Right? I can virtually guarantee it. 1 or 2 exceptions always arise, but for the most part, you'll come to a point where you think you have no idea what's happening. People who've trained with me before, would that be a fair, accurate summary of how this training works, this sort of thing works? Yes. And because of, I'll get a little bit of a little soapbox here, because of the way you were taught things at school, there's a certain paradigm that the current educational system instills in us, which basically creates panic or fear at not knowing something. In schools, we're taught you have to know something before you can do it. But actually, that's not how it works. You have to be able to do something before you can understand it. You need some reference experiences to have inside of that. You need to have unconscious learnings before the conscious ones can arise. Luckily, the unconscious part of the learnings happen much more quickly than the conscious ones. So the training is specifically designed for you to be able to learn more quickly and, more importantly, for you to be able to actually do something practical with it, which means for the most part of today and a lot of parts of tomorrow, you will probably be consciously lost about most of what's going on here. You won't really know how it fits together. You won't know what to do with it. You won't know how to apply it in the real world. And if you're willing to suspend your judgment until at least the final day, I promise you it will all come together. By the end of our time together here, everything we will have done will make sense. You'll know how to do it, why to do it, when to do it, where to do it. And more importantly, it'll come out naturally when you need it to, and you'll only realize after you've done it that actually that was the best thing for it to have happened. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Once again, those of you who've trained with me before, is that a relatively accurate reflection of your experiences with me? Yes? I just want to prepare you for this. Because when the time comes, when you're totally lost, I think this is happening too quickly, I really can't make sense of some of these things, there's a lot of ambiguity, I'm not quite sure what you expect from me. That's, by the way, on purpose a lot of the times. I'll explain why as we go along. You will at some point be tempted, if you've been really locked into the current version of the academic paradigm, to start feeling afraid, to blame yourself. You think, I'm not good enough, not smart enough, everyone else here is better than me, yada, yada, yada. These are thoughts that are likely to occur from time to time. Once again, those of you who've trained with me before, would that be an accurate thing to say? Yes? Don't believe yourself when it happens. We're doing something very different to the way that you used to. This is not school learning, this is adult learning. And there's certain expectations you can have of me for that, and some expectations I'm going to have of you to help assist that process, which I'll talk about in a moment. But one of the key things is, don't believe yourself if you think what you're doing isn't good enough. Here's one really good reason why. And then I want you to really think about this and maybe write it down or tattoo it somewhere on your forearm if you need to remind yourself of this. Because I can also guarantee that at least one or two people in this room will forget this at some point. And I'll remind you, and you'll go, oh yeah, when I do. Most of the things you'll be asked to do in here will be very easy, very simple things to do, very simple steps. If for some reason you finish an exercise and you feel that what you did was not good enough, the only reason it can happen is because you're trying to do something other than what I've asked you to do. And the reason for this is the exercises are designed to get you to do one thing, and the primary thing that you're being focused on doing is not actually the main thing you're supposed to be doing. So you really won't know what you're meant to be doing. That's going to be something that's going to happen unconsciously. It's been loaded so that your unconscious mind spontaneously finds certain, shall we say, patterns of interaction. And you won't know what those are ahead of time. You'll know by the end of the time together, looking back, you will be able to reflect on those things, but you will not know ahead of time. If you have no idea what the exercise is supposed to help you understand or get, how on earth could you possibly know whether or not you did it right? Does it make sense to you guys? Now, I understand as a theory right now, this makes sense. And in practice, there'll be a number of you who'll go, yeah, but I didn't do very good at this thing. And I'll ask you, well, how do you know? Well, it didn't come out the way it's supposed to. Well, what's supposed to happen? The fact is, if you think something isn't working the way it's supposed to, it is only because you have added something to it. You think that something is expected of you that is not. And then at this point, you have two choices. The first choice is to continue thinking those ways, beat yourself up, become an emotional wreck, and do your very best to continue learning despite all that. That's the traditional academic approach to the learning method. You're welcome to engage in that if that's a paradigm that you enjoy. Fine. The alternative is that you just stop it. You stop beating yourself up. You stop making judgments about whether or not what you did was good enough. The only thing you need to know ahead of time is, do you understand what is expected of you in the next exercise? In other words, what is the next little piece that we've done? If you don't understand what that is, feel free to ask and I'll clarify. There'll be some occasions in which I will have the exercise be purposefully ambiguous, at which point you're welcome to ask for clarification, but just don't be surprised if the answer is this. Okay, guys? Do you get the idea of where we're going with this? This is not a very usual type of training. Having said this, there are certain responsibilities that you have as part of our training program here. This is not school learning, this is adult learning, which means you're responsible for your own learning process, right? That means if you need to take notes, take notes. If you are better off paying attention, then by all means do so. You do not need to take notes. I have here my little screen of happiness. And all the major points, all the exercises, all the key ideas that we were talking about, I will write up here as we go along. At the end of our time here together, you will all be emailed a copy of these notes, right? They won't necessarily be written in volumes, because I'm just going to literally write out notes as we go along, but they'll help remind you of our time together here. You'll be sent those in an email, so you'll have at least a skeleton set of notes of what's going on here. If you want to take more notes than that, by all means, feel free to do so. If you need to stand up, there's some water stations at the back. If you need to stand up and get a glass of water anytime, by all means, feel free to do so. If you prefer learning on a yoga mat, in a nice little duffel bag or something like that, by all means, do so. Just make sure that whatever you do to make it easy for you to learn doesn't interfere with other people in the room, right? If your best way of learning something is by yelling at the top of your voice, not a good thing, right? You can yell as loud as you want inside of your mind, just don't let your vocal cords take part in that action, okay? If you need to have a chat with something like that, please be respectful. Just go outside, have a chat with them, and then come back inside afterwards. Again, it just means we can keep the whole process rolling as smoothly as possible. Does that make sense to you guys? Other than that, really, you're responsible for your own learning process, and that means you're also responsible for your emotional state, right? As I say, if you're happy to be frustrated and suffer and fearful about how badly you're doing, and the old sort of system of learning, by all means do so. However, if you're going to ask for help, expect the nature of the answer to come along the lines of, oh, what have you just added in terms of the exercise I didn't ask you to do? They go, well, I thought you wanted this. And I'll say, no, it wasn't. Now you can stop it. That'll be kind of the extent of my assistance to you. You are responsible for getting yourself back into a balanced state of mind. Does that make sense to you guys? Well, let's face it, if for another reason, then when you go out there and start using this stuff with other people, you can't call me up and go, oh, I'm in a really terrible state. I did this. It didn't work out the way I wanted to, and please help me now. Well, that's not going to happen, right? So you may as well start here as you mean to continue. Get yourself in the right state of mind. Get yourself into a position where you can do the exercises. If you find the exercises difficult to do, then realize you've added something that you needn't do, at which point either enjoy the fact you've added it or stop it, right? A very simple thing. And just enjoy the process as much as you can. It'll be a fast-paced thing. The next thing you should know is, part of the ways that this program is designed is, you will feel, for the most part, at least for the first few days, that you do not have enough time to do anything. All the exercises will start, they'll be very quick, and they'll be over before you know it. And again, you'll be tempted to say, there wasn't enough time in the exercise, I need more time. And once again, I will let you know and smile and go, great. If you felt you didn't have enough time, then you're in exactly the right place. I've taught this seminar in exactly this style, actually for the whole of last month. I've had to do 3 different venues and did it. So I've probably put through, I don't know, is it 400 people through the program so far? Maybe more? Maybe 500, I don't know. So rest assured, I know exactly what's going to come up, and you will feel pressured for time, and that's just fine. Your task is to do as much of what I've asked you to do in the exercise as possible in the limited amount of time you've been given. That means for many of you, you'll have to get out of your comfort zone and mentally speed up in a way that you aren't necessarily used to on a day-to-day basis. Rest assured, by the time we come to finishing the whole program on the final day, we'll have plenty of time to slow things down. And of course, by the time you leave here, you can do things at any pace that you wish to. However, my preference is to teach you more rather than less. And I want to teach you in a way that's easier for you to do rather than harder. And I'd like to help you get to a standard that's higher rather than lower. You get the idea? To do all these things, I have to be able to work with you in a way that you're not used to, because otherwise, well, you'd be doing it already, right? So if there's one person in the room that goes, this is easy, I'll do this all the time anyways, welcome to the club. It's the easy way to do it, right? Any questions about that process so far? We'll add a few more ideas around that as we launch into some of the exercises, but I think that's the core of what we're doing here. I don't know if you guys have come across this idea before. It's not quite presented this way or as categorically as this in the neuroscience literature, but when you actually look at the studies and the stuff that's implicit in terms of what they're doing, I think it's a very reasonable conclusion to make that all learning, all behavior, and all change happen unconsciously first. All learning, all behavior, and all change happens unconsciously first, and then the conscious mind catches up to it somewhere along the lines. Of course, as hypnotists, our jobs is to communicate with the unconscious mind to basically negotiate with that part of the mind that's responsible for all learning, all behavior, and all change, so that we can get the results that we're looking for more easily. Would that be fair to say? And of course, the learning process you're about to engage in has been designed around the same principle that all of your learnings, all your behaviors, and all your personal transformations have and will continue to occur at the unconscious level. Now that means, and if those of you who are interested in looking this up, the concrete term for this in neuroscience is called implicit learning. There's a couple of other variations on this as well, but that's the mainly researched part of the field. That means that you'll all be learning things that you're not aware of. In fact, in order to be aware of something you've learned, you're going to have learned a lot more than just that in order for your conscious mind to catch up to some part of that you think you will have learned. Because all the real learning, behaviors and changes are occurring outside of your conscious awareness. And the more comfortable you become learning outside of the conscious awareness and trusting that process to continue, then not only the easier this whole process gets for you, but the faster your learning becomes. Some of you may have heard of something called accelerated learning. Have you not? Hands up in kind of curiosity. I've been asked a lot about the idea of accelerated learning, and personally, I don't believe it exists. What I believe exists is natural learning. Your natural ability to learn far exceeds anything you're currently able to conceive of yourself of doing. Far exceeds that. It definitely exceeds anything you've done in school. If you think about your greatest achievement in traditional academia, in school, university, and so on, that's an example of what you can achieve when your natural learning process has been retarded. And I use that word very much on purpose. So I don't think so much an idea that accelerating learning exists. I think it's more an idea that natural learning exists, and that the methods we're currently using to try and stimulate the learning process, or the traditional methods that you're familiar with, tend to impede learning. We learn despite our school system, not because of it. This gives you a lot of freedom. All learning, all behavior, and all change happens unconsciously first. And all you have to do consciously is show up long enough and get out of your own way long enough for it to occur. Now, of course, if you want to slow down your learning process, then you can do certain things, like feel bad and tell yourself how things aren't working, and maybe even get to the point where you try so hard to do something, you just blank out and do nothing. Those are great ways to really slow down the learning process. But because implicit learning happens outside of your conscious awareness, then doing anything, even if you think it's the wrong thing, is better than doing nothing, attempting to do the right one. Because you're creating the context for your unconscious mind to learn. And there are many things that happen in that learning process. There are many ways that we reach the unconscious mind to stimulate the awesome power that you have to increase your learnings, to change your behaviors, and transform as an individual so you become healthier, happier, more successful in your life. Think back through human history, even through human prehistory. A tribe trying to survive on the plains of Europe, Africa, America, wherever they happen to have settled. And they're still hunter-gatherers. They haven't even got to the farming stage. Their livelihood depends on the animals they catch, does it not? And what do they do to become better hunters? One of the rituals that pretty much every single society that hunts has gotten into, has acquired, is a variation of the ones where you dress up in the wolf skin, the bear skin, whatever animal you wish to be able to track better or embody better. They dress up in these things, they dance around, they sing, they meditate, they do all kinds of different versions of this, at the end of which, strangely enough, people become better hunters. They achieve more somehow. Now, we might look back with the advantage of time and say how primitive. They think there's spirits and demons that they can possess and use the power of. Maybe there's something in that, maybe there's not. However, every single one of you has done something similar and learned from it without realizing you were doing so. Does anyone here have children? Of course, you've never caught your children wearing your clothing and look in the mirror trying to be you, have you? No one in this room has ever dressed up as a cowboy, an Indian, a policeman, or something else in order to engage your imagination as a child and really engage that role. Think about what children are doing at those times. They're developing a mental map, a full and rich sensory experience of what it is to succeed in a particular type of role. And to this day, you all still respond to the same kinds of ideas without realizing it. Some of you would feel naked if you turned up in your office just wearing a suit. Some of you will feel overdressed and awkward if you're wearing a suit. Some of you still dress up to go to the theater. Some of you do not. You'd feel awkward. But think about this. How does changing your clothing change your behaviors? When you go to an interview, do you just wear like a t-shirt and jeans? Or do you attempt to dress up to play the better role? Don't you feel more professional when you dress in a certain way? Take a police officer, remove his uniform, and all you're left with is a regular human being with the same kinds of problems that you and I have. Dress them up in a uniform. And they start adopting characteristics that go with their profession. They're more confident, more authoritative. So there's something that occurs at the unconscious level when we adopt a role of some sort. Something that shapes all of our lives. The way you are right now, the way you dress, the way you behave, the way you interact with others, is that a set of choices that you've made as a result of seeing the people around you in your environment and mentally taking on only those roles that's something of value for you. And to this day, you will still adapt or adopt certain mannerisms, physical gestures, articles of clothing, and so on. if we ran this seminar in Saudi Arabia, do you think I would be seeing as many t-shirt and jeans, suits as I do in here? Or would I see more longer flowing robes? Would I see more headdresses? Why is it so different there? If not, because they're looking at different role models than you. And they become who they are in the same way you become who you are, by adopting an attitude first inside your mind. There's a very strange phenomenon that happens in a particular niche of the acting field. Any actors in the room? Anyone involved in acting? You guys may have come across this before. It's called, there are various versions of this, but it's essentially called mask work, where actors put on a mask. And then the trick to mask work is they get out of their own regular personality long enough, they look in the mirror, and they look at the expression on the mask. It's happy, it's sad, it's angry, and whatever. And after a period of doing this, if they can get over their own insecurities about letting go, something very strange happens. Very powerful emotions begin to arise. Powerful emotions that are in direct relationship to the mask that they're wearing. If they're wearing a mask which is bright and smiling and full of fun, they start laughing and having a great time. If it's a different mask, they may break down crying, even if they're the happiest person in normal life. All learning, behavior, and change happen unconsciously first. So, really it's your job, whilst you're in here, to create the right mental environment inside yourself to ensure that your unconscious mind gets the hint as to what kind of learning is worth focusing on in here, is it not? Now I know that you came here for a specific reason. Some of you will actually be aware of what some of those specific reasons actually are. And of course you realize that whatever you think you came here for, your unconscious mind has other ideas too that you haven't realized yet. So whatever you think you came here for, and all the other things you really came here for but haven't realized yet, all of those things begin to add up into kind of a mental picture, an image of something. Someone who, for a lack of a better description, is a great hypnotist. A great hypnotist who has the power to influence others in their lives. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Now, the one thing I don't know is what that hypnotist looks like to you. For some of you, they may be wearing a, old Victorian suit with a top hat and a monocle. That's a nice cliche, but it'll work. Others of you will have a different version of it in mind. Some of you will have a great covert hypnotist in mind who is so great that no one other than them knows they're doing it. Now, the one thing I could never possibly know is what that idea of a great conversational hypnotist is that you have right now. I suspect that most of you have at least an understanding of what that is, even if you don't have a full appreciation of it yet. Would that be fair to say? And just like those masks, it becomes easier for you to understand exactly what that role will be for you. Not before you begin, but after you started the role and played it for long enough for it to actually come to life for you. Think of it this way. let us assume that it's the end of our 3 days here together and you've achieved every single thing you came here for, both consciously and unconsciously too. Let us assume that beyond that, some time has passed and you have been practicing diligently and getting great results to the point where you have truly mastered every nuance of this field and know it. You have full confidence in your abilities. Is this an assumption we can make for a moment? If you're not there right now, there may be a time in the future that you could predict, yes, I could probably get somewhere close to that. Would that be fair to say? Now, I know that you don't know what that path may look like yet. How could you? It's the future. But you have a pretty good idea now what the end of that path might be. So what I want to ask you is, if you were this tremendously gifted hypnotist who's acquired all these skills through practice, experience, and many, many learnings, how would you hold yourself? How would you carry your physical body? That would be a beginning. How would you be breathing differently, if at all? Now, of course, you'd think along different mental pathways than you were used to before you became this great hypnotist, would you not? You would literally see the world differently through a different pair of eyes because you would be different, would you not? Which means that when you're talking to people, you'd talk differently. You would use different words. You would speak in different rhythms and different manners. Now, of course, many of those things will be things you are already doing, just enhanced, shall we say. Would that be fair to say? So as you think about what that version of you might be like, or, if you prefer, thinking about someone who has achieved all those qualities that one day you wished to achieve once you've gone down this path yourself. The question I have for you is, do you know enough about that kind of person to, just like a child, pretend for a period of time at least, that you are them for long enough to at least have a brief chat with someone else? Can you do all that? It's not a difficult thing I'm asking you to do, is it? All right, this is the interactive part of the day. This is yes, this is no, this is just keep talking. You just sound so good when you talk. So I'm not asking a difficult thing of you, am I? Right? So the only thing I'm going to add to this then is, well, it's two things. Be prepared to start off with wherever you're at and let it evolve. And for those of you who really want to accelerate this process, I'd like you to take those qualities that we've just been talking about and accentuate them into a caricature almost. The way we're going to do this is a very simple thing. All I want to ask you to do, just to kind of experiment with this a little bit, is all you do is to stand up for a moment. You can put your pens and papers down. Now, if you look around the room, we've got about 200 people in the room here. And they're all fascinating people because, believe it or not, they're all world-class hypnotists in their own right. And of course, seeing as you are one now as well, at least we're going to be pretending and playing that game for a little while. Wouldn't it be fascinating to find out what another world-class hypnotist in your field happens to be like? Wouldn't that be interesting? Right? Now, what do people normally do when they meet each other? They ask certain questions, don't they? Questions like, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? Why have you come here? Isn't that the kind of questions we ask each other? So to make life easy for yourself, you have 4 questions you can ask each other already, so it's not exactly difficult. Now, I know that you're used to answering these questions in a particular way. You've done so before. Which means that if you were a true master of your craft, a real masterful hypnotist, you'd probably be answering those 4 questions in any way but those that you're used to, wouldn't you? So, seeing there's 200 people in the room, I think if I give you about 9 minutes, you should have enough time to meet every single person, exchange some small chit-chat, and your job is to see if you can play or ham up this role of a masterful hypnotist far beyond your comfort zone. And find out, see if you can spot whether or not the person in front of you has actually reached their comfort zone or they're holding back a little bit. You get the idea? 9 minutes to meet everyone in the room, playing the masterful hypnotist that you want to be one day. Off you go. Let's talk a little bit about this last exercise. First of all, I take it that it was a lot of fun to just talk to people in a slightly different role, a little set of mind, yes? Did some of you notice that it's fun to step into it, and some of you felt it's a little bit like, oh, it's a little awkward, I don't know, I'm normally not like this. Would that be fair to say yes? That's exactly why you're doing it, by the way, because you're normally not like this, and you want to be something you're not normally like whilst doing this, right? The question I really have uppermost in my mind, though, is, even though you haven't managed to meet everyone in the room yet, tut-tut, try harder next time, you met enough people to get a sense of what their responses to these kind of questions were, and more importantly, to get a sense of how they're answering them rather than just how they're asking the questions. Would that be fair to say yes? Did you notice that you liked some of those answers better than others? In other words, there's certain things that they said or certain ways that they said it that you went, oh, yeah, I kind of like that. That's pretty good. It fits with what I think a great hypnotist should be like. Would that be fair? So, all I'm going to ask you to do, when you come across a mannerism like that, a phrase like that, a word or an idea like that, steal it. Make it your own. Add it into your own mental profile, the role that you're playing, to enrich it. Because when you recognize it in someone else, it's only because it's already resonating with one part of your own internal model, the unconscious part at least anyways. So you may as well adopt it and enrich it further. Does that make sense, everyone? All right, guys, let's give you another 3 minutes so you can finish off, the last few people you haven't met yet. Making sure you adapt and take as much from each person as you go along so that each time you repeat these questions, they should not be coming out the same way anymore. Does that make sense? Off you go. We're about to do a series of very fast-paced exercises designed to get you rolling with a lot of the conversational hypnosis stuff. Initially, it will look nothing like conversational hypnosis. Please bear with me with that. We're just doing some training wheels before we take them away and run with the more conversational stuff. Does that make sense, you guys? Is that okay with you? So there'll be some fast-paced exercises. This is going to be very quickly come to the point where it'll be too fast for you. So remember, when that happens, feel free to tell me and feel free to get one of these, well done, in response. Because the exercises are this fast, I'm going to ask you to not bother too much with the social niceties yet. I'll let you know when normal social context starts applying again. For the moment, each time we do an exercise, I will add one key piece I'm going to ask you to focus on. Whatever else you do, make sure that that's the piece that you focus on most of all. That's most of your attention, most of your energy goes onto that particular piece. And if you want to add anything on top of that, that's on you. In other words, if it's taken away from that, well, then you just had a different learning experience than everyone else has, which you're welcome to do, but it just means if you have a question later on, I'll remind you where you may have missed a thing along the way. Does that make sense, everyone? So, the other part is, it won't be so relevant for the first exercise, but here's a nice little clock. I'm going to give you a countdown. And typically, I'll be giving you between 30 and 60 seconds to do an exercise. Don't worry, the first one's a lot easier. You only get 10 seconds for that one. Because you'll be switching around inside with your partners, please keep an eye on the clock, because if you go over your 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever, you're basically taking time away from them to do their part of the role. Does that make sense, you guys? If you find it happening to you 2 or 3 times in a row, the solution to that is be the hypnotist first the next time you do an exercise. All right? Other than that, those are the main kind of logistical bits just to make sure this runs smoothly. And let's get back into some hypnosis stuff. You notice that when you're doing the kind of meeting everyone sort of exercise, that you're doing it out of character. In other words, you're doing it in a new character rather than an old one. Would that be fair to say, yes? Yeah. Did you like the character you were becoming whilst doing that, the role you were playing overall? Yes? Yeah. That's 3 hands. This is a very disappointing turnout. Let's try that again. Did you like that? That's a little bit more realistic here. I'm going to encourage you to go to the point where you're feeling a little uncomfortable playing that role. In other words, it's too exaggerated, it's too much. Because by coming back from that exaggerated version, you'll find a much more comfortable middle ground that'll work for you. If you never approach the edge, you'll never know where that comfortable middle ground is for you. This will be true for the next few exercises as well, because really this general attitude, I mean, the exercise will be really simple, there's no-brainer really. So it's really more getting you to step into the role as fully and completely as possible. Here's how you know you're doing it right. If at the end of the day I remind you about the role that you're playing, and you go, yeah, I've been doing it all day, but what role are you talking about? Then you know you've done it right. If you go, oh yeah, damn it, I forgot to do that, I just went back to the way I normally do things, well then you've missed out on a chance to accelerate some of the learning processes, which is fine, it's just, it changes things a little bit for you. You get the idea? So the more extreme you can be here at the beginning, the faster you will progress, and the easier later exercises will become for you. It's your choice with how much easier you want the hard exercises to be for you. It means the easy exercises now, you just have to push yourself a bit harder, that's all, right? But it's a personal choice. So, ready for the first exercise, yes? Yeah. First exercise is very simple. You're going to turn to your partner. Everyone quickly find someone in your group to be a partner and then come back this way. Okay, good, they're done. Face this way again. What's the magic word, everyone? I'm not entirely sure why you're speaking so much, because all you have to do is say, you, great, done. So you'll have a partner, and it's going to be important because the next few things will happen at speed. With your partner, remembering that you are the world's greatest hypnotist now, I want you to do something which is going to be ridiculously easy for you. I want you to turn to them and meaningfully ask them to close your eyes and go into a trance. They, being the world's greatest hypnotic subject, it's true. Oh, I did not mention that part yet. Being the world's greatest hypnotic subject, they're going to know exactly what to do. They go, great, here we go. And they'll go into a wonderful deep trance. Once they've had about a second or two to enjoy the amazingness of that trance, you just ask them to come back. And they'll open their eyes, go, well done. At which point you switch roles, right? If this takes you any more than 5 seconds apiece to do, then you've added some amazingly extraneous thing, which could be very interesting, but that's entirely on you. Do you understand the nature of the exercise, yes? So literally 5 seconds apiece. I won't even bother putting on the clock. I'll just tell you when it's time to turn around. Off you go. Okay, did you enjoy that? Yes. Was it fast-paced? Yeah. Did anyone here not have enough time? Good, stop it. You're adding stuff. Now, this will become increasingly important for those of you who've got more experience rather than less. The temptation will be to do all those things you already know about. But given you already know about them, why spend time practicing those? You're better off putting all your time and energy and attention into those things you don't normally do. That way, you will grow further here. And then when you reintroduce those things you're aware of doing well, then your repertoire will be that much better, won't it? So for those of you who have more experience, I'm going to challenge you to use as little of it as possible, at least for the next day. Restrain yourself if you can. For those of you who have no experience, you're in great shape. So the exercise was easy to do, right? Now, let me ask you this. How convinced were you as a hypnotist that your subject was A, the world's greatest subject, and B, was in the most wonderfully profound trance where basically any situation, any hypnotic suggestion you made would be totally accepted and acted out on? 2 hands? 3 hands? 4 hands? Oh, that's pretty good. All right. Now let me do the flip side of that. How many of you were a little unconvinced? It's like, yeah, they could be doing better. They did all right. They didn't do bad, but this is not like, this is like the best subject ever. The one I want to stick into my suitcase and go traveling with to show how great a hypnotist I am. Put your hands up if you had someone like that. In other words, wasn't bad, but wasn't necessarily great. So here's what I'd like you to do now. There was something that you were seeing that led you think, well, there's something decent going on here. It's better than nothing, right? Would that be fair to say? And there were some things you weren't seeing that if you had seen them, you would have been more convinced. Would that also be fair to say, yes? Now, you may or may not consciously know yet what all those things are. However, in the next exercise, with the same partner? No, actually, yeah, we'll do the same part very quickly. Again, it'll be like a 20-second exercise. All I want you to do is get them to close their eyes go into a trance, and then help coach them. In other words, all the things they could be doing to be even more convincing, tell them to have a go, right? Give me an example of something that you saw your subject do that convinced you that, yes, they've altered the state somehow, at least they're mimicking it rather well. Something, go ahead.
Relax their face.
So their face muscles relaxed, right? So let's say you asked me to go, close my eyes and go into a trance. I'm going, good, I'm here. Right? Then a simple little coaching might be, now just relax your face muscles. Really? All right. It's as simple as that, right? There'd be a very long list of things you could coach people into doing so they look like a more convincing hypnotic subject. Would that be fair to say? So what I'd like you to do is with the same partner, I would like you to do the same thing, but now add another 5 seconds of coaching where you just tell them a couple of things that they can do to actually improve or have a more convincing performance. And of course, subjects, listen, these coaches are here to help you. So mimic it better. Off you go. Was that interesting? Who was more convinced the second time around? Hands up. Excellent. Who, as a subject, enjoyed that coaching? In other words, it helped them to do a little bit of a role. So we're all happy winners this way, right? You let them know what to do, they do it, we're both very happy, right? Again, very quickly, same thing, just 20 seconds apiece, with a different partner inside your group, right? So very quickly find a partner and then come back. Let's see in a second. All right, so as soon as you have a partner face this way, because we're going to do one little bit extra as well. So you've got a new partner. You're going to have the same exercise, so close your eyes, go into a trance. You're going to do a little bit of coaching in terms of what they can be doing better. What I'd like you to include, however, is your memory of your previous partner, because something this partner will be doing will be missing out on what the other partner already taught you was looking good. So at that point, just go, great. Well, the other guy did this, so offer it to them as a coaching piece as well, see if it takes. Does that make sense to you guys? Easy to do? Literally 20 seconds a piece, off you go. So did you enjoy that, yes? Quick, simple, easy to do, right? Now, let me ask you this, particularly as subjects. Jakob, can you have the mic ready, please? Particularly as subjects. Was there something that your hypnotist did that made it easier for you? Yes? So what kind of thing? Stand up and we'll get a mic to you so we can all hear. Someone stand up? Yeah, stand up. Just over here.
I was saying when my partner was coaching me, it was like a feedback, let me know I was doing it correctly, and it allowed me to go deeper and quicker, and
excellent.
It reassured me.
So what you're saying is that when your partner told you that not just new things to do, but actually reinforced old things you're already doing well, that actually helped enhance the process, yes?
That's right.
Thank you, very good. You've done this before, right? So let's just have a look at this in terms of, let's keep track of what we're talking about here. Let's have one of these beauties. So we have, this is your close your eyes induction. That was easy. And so what we just discovered here is that, let's call this ratifying trance signals, in other words, something that we're doing well, helps to enhance the experience, correct? Who's next? Who's got the next microphone? All right, just give us a lady here. She's right there. She's right there. We'll come over this way then. Just stand up so we can all see you.
Hello. First of all, I'm going to step into roles straight away. Today's my birthday. So
oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I found that when Barry and Jonathan were very sort of just strong, as in commanding, like they know what they're doing.
Right.
So taking authority, not giving me room to error or to...
You're actually a little bit ahead of the game here, which is great. So there's something about being authoritative in what you're doing that makes it work much better, correct? Now, we'll have to talk a little bit about what we mean by authority, because our culture has a bit of an ambivalent or a little bit of a schizophrenic view of authority. In some respects, it's like, you do this, and you go, no, yeah, go and make me, right? Versus there's a kind of a competent version of authority, which is, go ahead and do that. And we'll go, sure, why not? So there's a style that is authoritative without being necessarily tyrannical. Does it make sense, everyone? We'll talk more after the break that we'll have in a minute about what that is and how that works. For the moment, however, you know, notice the difference between this. Everyone just close your eyes and go into a trance. Now come on back. That's it. It was quick. It was easy. Yeah, I was going to oh my God, I'm going to get an ego induction. No. You have to work for your inductions. Now try this one. Could you close your eyes and go into a trance now, please? Close your eyes. Everyone, please close your eyes. No? All right, I'll give up. So, of course, I'm hamming it up a little bit, but you can clearly see that often when people think this isn't working, all that's happening is they're not working it properly. Do you understand the difference? Again, after the break, we'll look a little more into how we can develop that sense of authority. But for the moment, if your particular mental role model of a great hypnotist does not include some kind of air of competence at the very least, if not authority, but an air of competence as in, I know what I'm doing, and just ask for instructions without any issues, then please add that into your mix, because it'll definitely help, right? And I wouldn't be in the vaguest bit upset if in the next exercise you do in a moment, you overdid it and became a little tyrannical with it. Is it okay with you, the rest of you in the room, that if your hypnotist is a little bit tyrannical for a few things just to find his swing, so to speak, that you won't take offense? Is that okay with you guys? Yes? All right, this is a very lukewarm yes. Is that okay with everyone? Yes? Yes. So you all have a permission now to be tyrannical once. So thank you for that. That was very good. Over here we had something else. Who was to stand up? It's the easy way to find you to stand up. There you go.
It's just when the young lady was doing the induction, her voice got lower, the tone became lower.
So something's
and
happening with the
slower.
voice. And in this particular instance, is the voice becoming lower that somehow was more pleasant to you?
It seemed more deepening.
It was more deepening, so you enhanced the experience for you in some way.
Yes.
Beautiful, thank you. What else do you guys notice? Over here? Or first person to stand? Right over here, he's in the front, and then we'll work our way back. Just stand and we can, there you go.
For me, it was a shoulder touch.
A shoulder touch.
Yeah, it relaxed me really, really
Wonderful.
fast.
So having a bit of physical contact, that's the right time. You may as well head back to this very patient person here. Having a piece of physical contact at the right time can enhance whatever experience you're having. Is that correct? Of course, there is touching, there's touching. And if you find yourself in a prison cell, you probably chose the wrong one. Bit late at that point. But let's face it, you're all socially responsible people. You realize that, there's certain touches, shoulders, arms tend to be okay. Guys, you have to know someone pretty well before you go down that road, right? So you understand that there's versions of that, right? As a rule, if you're going to go down that road, especially in conversations, you can start with touching often but lightly, and then just see how people respond to that, and then decrease to increase it as you need to. You'll find your own particular style over time. The rule with touching, by the way, is if you feel uncomfortable about doing it, they'll feel doubly uncomfortable having it done to them, right? If you're actually very natural about it, most people who think they'd be uncomfortable with it will be okay with it. But again, not all, right? Thank you. Let's have one last one, and then we'll... The question is, should you ask for permission before you touch someone? Inside of if you're going to do hypnotherapy, which we're not teaching here, by the way, we're teaching influence hypnosis, right? If you're talking about therapy, then yes, it's a very wise thing to do, ask for it both consciously and unconsciously. However, outside of that context, especially for conversational hypnosis, you kind of defeat the purpose of saying, well, welcome, stranger. I'm going to be talking to you for a while. From time to time, I may touch you. Is that okay with you? You've kind of broken the social contract a little bit at that point, right? So hence what I'm saying is, for the moment, just get more used to the touching in general. And if you don't like it, then don't include it. It has some very enhancing effects. And remember, all this stuff will ultimately be done inside of a context, a very social context. And if you are comfortable inside of that context, touching the kind of people that you're with, or what kind of touches you'll be comfortable with, do those. If you're not, then either increase your comfort zone or don't do it. Does that help? And by the way, you'll tell very quickly whether or not you've made an error. Would you like to know how? Just come up just to do it. Just Just touch me on the shoulder. That tends to be the reaction, right? It's an more extreme version, but you have people tensing up, pulling away, frowning. You know, these are little subtle cues that, everyone except for Werner has got, of course, sight issues. Everyone who's normally sighted should be able to see unless you're actually deleting it out of your experience, and in which case you are, start paying attention. It's a good thing to do. Go ahead.
The way he was hypnotizing me, it was better helping me flowing away like a river from my own conscious thinking.
So what was he doing that made it more pleasant or enhanced, that made it easier for you to flow away like this?
He was adding a little bit more little things to think, to go with my mind, so I was going away.
So far, would it be fair to say that most of you focused on physical processes, right? Relaxing this, changing your breathing here, a postural change there, and so on. Would that be fair to say? So he's just introduced a new element here, has he not? Let's call these cognitive processes, because they are. Let's call these having hypnotic thoughts. There are certain types of thoughts that if you engage in them will tend to accentuate the general flavor, shall we say, of hypnosis, right? I invite you to experiment as to what those may be. Again, I'd rather collect them from you rather than me giving you a long list of them because you're generating those experiences at that point. Does it make sense to everyone? So we've got something around. We've got something about developing characteristic in your voice that makes it more hypnotic and more engaging as a result. We'll evolve that process over time. We definitely have the idea that ratifying something they're doing well already tends to overall enhance the experience, right? So you can ratify things that they're already doing, and then you can add things they're not doing yet, and finding the right balance will help people really get the most out of it. Would that be correct? And finally, we've got the idea that adding certain kinds of hypnotic thoughts, certain things that their minds can do along with their physical stuff, helps them get into it. In terms of the acting world, this is just called method acting, isn't it? Where you get into the role even further. So we're going to have a break in a moment. However, whilst you're having a break, I would like for you to think about what are some kind of thoughts that you can invite people to engage in as part of this little coaching process that you've been doing already, that if they did that, if they followed those mental thoughts or the hypnotic thoughts that you're going to ask them to think about, would tend to enhance the experience even further in the same way as the touching did, the voice did, and the ratifying of the experiences that you've already been talking about did also. Do you get the idea of this? It's just a simple thing. I don't know what the answers you will have. You're better off coming up with several of your own. And by the way, the more you find, the better. You get to experiment with different versions of this. Do you all get the idea of this? Yes? So we're going to have a break in a second. When you come back from the break, please come back to the same groups you're in right now. We haven't used them up yet, so we'll do a few more cycles, and then we'll come back and do something else. So for now, let's take 15 minutes. It's now 10:37. Let's be back here 10:47, and we'll start at 10:50 on the dot, okay?